Loss of use. Explain.
I'm Ladeja from Recover My Value.
What actually controls recovery of loss of use? Loss of use, for one, it's one most misunderstand. I wouldn't say it's because it's complex. Loss of use is the compensation for deprivation of your vehicle that occurred on the loss date. You lost use and you should be compensated for that. That's what it is. It's measured by usually a reasonable rental value for your vehicle times the days that until it's been restored from the lost date. That's how I'd calculate it. I believe the court would agree. It's not reimbursement for inconvenience, but it is, in many situations, it doesn't require that you actually rented a vehicle, but that will be an argument against you. Like, was it really that bad of a deprivation if you didn't spend more money to uninconvenience yourself? And that's not something that everyone can do. You've caught them at the edge. That was what they had. That's why I'm here. The issue isn't whether you rented, it's whether you were deprived and how that deprivation is documented. Loss of use, it just depends on, first, clear liability positioning. We start with that. Defined repair or total loss timelines. Proper documentation of duration. That's, for one, getting the police report at the beginning. That sets the date. It gives you proof that the accident took place. That's your loss date. So having that loss date and then having the date that they sent you the notification that your vehicle is ready, those will be the dates that I use, and I probably count the days and get very particular that way. Mitigation framing. And so they're also going to try and come for, well, you didn't really try to get it out the tow yard or handle this claim sooner than it actually was handled. And that's not our fault that, we didn't get a liability determination to you after like 3 months because we were still trying to determine it. You didn't have what we needed to determine it. The liability was vague. That wasn't our fault. That could be their argument. And so you have to be prepared to frame that as, well, hold on. But you've chosen to take the time that you took to determine whether it was what it was. You're taking the police report, but you're not looking at the street where it shows that they're across the double yellow line trying to pass and they hit the vehicle. You see how I always go back to liability, because liability is your foundation. That's part of your argument. Like, this is all because of you. You're insured, not you. You're insured. I'm the claimant. That's if you're third party, if you have a third party claim, you're the claimant. And you're dealing with the insured because you're trying to claim for their insurance company the liability they have and are required to have on their vehicle. So if liability was dragged, that affects duration. If total loss was processing delayed, that affects exposure. Insurers, they evaluate time, documentation. I would want to say that they're reasonable every single time because they can try and require that you give them something that doesn't exist and say that you didn't even submit a claim in the first place, because even though the court has a calculation in its law that calculates diminished value, I'm going back to diminished value, but in its law, it literally describes how diminished value is calculated. And you're saying to me, like complete gaslight, you're saying to me that it did not specifically say that was the calculation. It actually deferred to, well, we can't make a determination. We can't make a determination that this is what it needs to be calculated as. And we'll leave it to the truer of fact. We'll leave it to the jury to make that decision. When you do that, you now have civil courts, small claims beyond $6,000. You have barriers additional barriers for someone to pursue something that they already should be entitled to. That's friction. It's the back and forth. It's a lot. In injury matters, loss of use often becomes the friction point. Like medical treatment may be progressing, but clients arguing about their vehicle. When that lane is structured clearly, tension does drop and allows them to even just focus on whatever their medical injury is. They've lost perhaps another way to be mobile, like your livelihood kind of thing. This could be your home. Clear structure protects the entire case, but you have to know, like, what is the structure? Like, okay, I can say that, it's easier to say it, but what are you saying, right? Because loss of use, it's not necessarily just arguing for rental, it's about documenting the deprivation and structuring the duration. That's just the strategy of it. For loss of use, by the way, you can claim this in small claims court, usually up to $6,000. I think usually it will fall into that space. I'm getting a venue to air out my legal arguments without the extra expense of being in civil court that requires all these like evidentiary things and all that stuff. If I can get the job done, let's see what we can do. I'm LaDeja from Recover My Value. I help people offload complex property damage disputes so they're not left wasting hours arguing with the insurance company.